farming, farmers and agriculture, very critical in the development matrix of Nigeria, and therefore must be captured as the nation heads to the 2023 general elections. I'm joined in the studio by Mr. Redson Tereke. He is the Secretary of the Agriculture and Commodities Directorate of the APC Presidential Campaign Council. Thanks for joining us.
It's an honor being here. The Liberty TV, I can say, gave me the platform that I needed in activism, in politics, and in farming. And so this is practically my spiritual home.
You're most welcome. You are a farmer, and then you're also driving as a convener and coordinator of Asiwaju Farmers Forum or something like that?
Yes. Now, the Asiwaju Farmers Forum is a forum that is pulling Nigerians from all over the country who are mostly in rural Nigeria. People who over the past decades have actually become what I call the lost people when it comes to government policies, when it comes to the ability of the rural culture to become productive and a central part of national development. Now, when the presidential candidate of the APC, in one of his colloquium, I think it was 2019 or so, talked about the insecurity in the country. And what should Nigeria do? Employ the youths who are without jobs, train them, and then make them a force that you can utilize in battling the insecurity, particularly in the north. But then how do you feed them? You are not going to begin to import food for 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million youths who you have engaged to become your core security structure. You're not going to be feeding them with Kalmanari or Samuelanella, whatever those names are. You feed them with AGBADO, you feed them with CASSAVA. And so what people did was to take that reality of our country and then they made it a joke. So what we did was to say, come on, let's take a step back. Look at a nation like the United States, for example. Thanksgiving in August. After that, what happens? Black Friday, then elections, then they go back to the fields. Nations of the world were primarily productive and they were industrialized from agriculture.
Okay, I know that you have so much to say. I mean, we've turned this agriculture, and then your principal, Asiwaju, alluded to AGBADO and CASSAVA, and it became a national joke. And let's move that to the bigger issue of agriculture, the plight of farmer. Nigeria's moved from a net exporter of food crops, a net producer of food crop. Now we're borrowing and we're talking about a food insecure nation. You also alluded to security. Are we not taking for granted the situation of farmers farming, even as we're discussing other issues in this election?
No, we're
turning it into a joke.
Yeah, exactly what I said. That is the challenge of development and the challenge of what I call the lost generation. And our generation currently is a lost generation. In developed countries today, agriculture is still a central component of the development. I often use the example of the United States and the challenge they had with China, sometime 2020, where Donald Trump had to bail out the soya beans farmers in the US to the tune of almost $60 billion.
63 actually.
Billion dollars.
Yes.
So 63. You see, that is $63 billion. That is what soya beans farmer add to the American economy. If you add $10 billion to the Nigerian economy annually from soya beans, you will mop up the unemployment situation in the country. Now, when people talk about agriculture, they look at agriculture the way it was 50, 60 years ago. No. agriculture has to be foundational, yes. It has to cater for the needs of rural Nigeria, yes. But it does have to be mechanical. It has to become a whole expanse of manufacturing and reproductivity.
And the value chain.
And the value chain.
Yes.
Because that is where manufacturing and productivity comes in. Because you see, we're not talking about the crude crop cultivation. We're talking about the new oil. You see, the challenge has always been, you're talking about, look at crude oil and the challenge of crude oil to the development of the Nigerian state. The AGBADO economy is talking about the new crude oil. And the new crude oil is agriculture. When you look at, I mean, look at this example. If you want to extract for what I call crude oil in Nigeria today, your exploration process, you take hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. Lagos State spent, I think, about $300 million before they discovered oil, and I think they're extracting about 10,000 barrels of crude oil a day. If you spend $250 million to open up the farm fields in Zamfara, or the plain fields in Kebbi, or the hilly lands in Taraba, if you spend $250 million on agriculture, you will mop up and create over 10 million jobs in those regions alone. And not just that, you open them up to the new economy. And not just that, you open them up to the new world, you open them up to market, you open them up to the capacity of a people to know that within our nation and within the plains of our land lies the gold mine to make our future safe. So when you look at it, when you look at the agriculture of AGBADO and cassava, and then you simply look at what you're holding in your hand as AGBADO and the cassava, and you forget to think deep and ask yourself a question: what is the core component of penicillin? It comes from agriculture. Cassava, ethanol, and that is why it is the new crude oil. It has always been the new crude oil. But I can almost say, with regards to the Nigerian state and our development challenges, when we discovered crude oil, this nation was not built, was never built with crude oil. It was built from the farm fields in the north, and then the wet marshlands in the south. Now, when you look at agriculture, right, and then you don't utilize those opportunities and advantages, and you lose that, your crude oil became a source of earning and a source of national development and growth. But as the challenge has always been, it does not employ as much people as it should.
Okay, let's look at the way we do agriculture. I mean, it's like we are doing agriculture the way Adam and Eve did it. You just put a seedling in the soil and watch the rain come, the sun come. God does everything. That is at one level. At the other level is when we move agriculture and the farmer's interest to mainstream politics, they get shortchanged. They're used and dumped. When the governments are set up today, look at how much the farmer is spending to buy fertilizers, seedlings, and the rest of them. You use the agriculture. There's a groundswell of the population in agriculture. We've been told 7-8% of Nigerians are in agriculture. Take the irony of another 7-8% of Nigerians. This is NBS statistics. Not being able to feed themselves. So are we not playing games with agriculture and those in agriculture, rural people and the farmers? Okay, so your questions are two ways. One, the crude treating agriculture the way it used to be, and secondly, the challenges of the Nigerian farmer today. So let's look at and not being taken for a ride,
yes,
used as an electoral tool and dumped.
Now, number one, I have no problem with taking it as a crude, even going back to the 50s and 60s. And this is why. The Chinese cultural and economic revolution was premised on build China for the Chinese people. So what they did was they mobilized a huge number of their population to the fields. I mean, you know the history. Chairman Mao of the Chinese Communist Party. And yes, millions of Chinese died in that process. But it created what we call the productivity of the Chinese state today was started then. We're 200 million people. And I always tell people, please don't be too smart. Don't be telling me about smart drones and code for technology, for farming. No. Because the majority of the farming population are unemployable. They are not educated. And so what do? You create a blend of both. You deploy them to the field, bring in a part of machinery to support their growth, and then do what was done in Eastern Asia. The Thailand and Vietnamese of this world. What did they do? What they did was they realized that they could not afford to be buying the big tractors and coals of this world. So they converted Okadas to tractors. They were using, let's say, use animal to harrow, to plow. And so they divided, they opened up agriculture, and they make micro components, and then they use those micro components in most of the rural areas, and then begin to use high machineries in the semi-urban area. And that created massive revolution in food production. So yes, agriculture in Nigeria is still practiced almost at the level of very crude, but that's not too much of a challenge. If you engage the people, you can engage them today, educate them a little bit, improve their process of engagement. So as you move, you begin to what? To make them more comfortable in industrializing. It's exactly what I've been saying about herders farmers class. You can't wake up one morning and say all the cattle, 20 million cattle in Nigeria should be in ranch. Do you know what it costs to feed a cattle? A cow consumes about 25 liters of water a day, and about 25 kg of food a day. How many make us please yes more novice. How many Fulani husbands feed a gather cow until they take care of their cow? So they're going to be grazing openly. So what happens is you create a blend. Government comes in, create ranches, move most of them to those ranches, and educate them to understand the benefit of ranching. So we can do go from enjoy part of the crude way of agriculture before we move to full-blown industrial agriculture. That is number one. Number two, one of the reasons the Asiwaju Farmers Forum has become very important is because he has made commitments.
You know, I want us to really stress this.
Yes.
The Asiwaju Farmers Forum, beyond being a tool to curry votes,
he has made commitments. And his commitment is what we at the Asiwaju Farmers Forum call the farmers' contract. And that is, I will ensure that the Nigerian farmer is supported to the level where he becomes a core of the Nigerian productivity. Now, like I often say, when people ridicule AGBADO and CASSAVA, it is because they fail to understand that there is no sector in this country today that is producing as much as the agricultural sector with regards to manpower, with regards to food productivity, and even with regards to industrialization. And so he is making a commitment that, look, I am not calling for your vote because I just want to use you and dump you, like in the traditional case. I am calling for your vote because if you look at Lagos, for example, over the last 30, 40 years, since I left government, you can see the impact of what I've done. Planning for the future is as important as being successful today in whatever you do. So there is a contract between him and the farmers. And that contract is saying, if you are in rural Nigeria, we will look at your challenges. There are so many farmers today that we call them audio farmers. They are Buja farmers. Most of them, let's be very blunt and honest, I'm going to say it here on camera. A lot of audio farmers get to enjoy all the government benefits.
That is it.
So what we are doing differently is this. The mobilization of farmers in Nigeria is not happening in Abuja. It's not happening in Lagos, in center of Lagos, or in Port Harcourt, or in the cities of Kaduna. No. It is happening in the villages of Lere. It is happening in the villages of Owo. It is happening in the villages of Nnewi, local communities all across the country who have been told that learn from our experience. I am the MD and the managing partner of Energy Sales Farm Estate in Kokuna local government in Gati. It's a community that was built from scratch without government support. Yes, government support came in later, but we built it as a vision of what agriculture should look at. So people look at what we have done there to appreciate what Asiwaju intend to do. These are examples set not by government, but by the will and the zeal and determination and tenacity of Nigerians who believe that yes, Nigeria can change from within Nigeria.
Let me just, it may sound rhetorical. I mean, it's part of the rhetorics in politics. In 2015, 2019, farmers in different parts of Nigeria, I recall in Plateau, Shendam, and from Yobe, some people from the far northwest end in Sokoto, farmers, hard-earned money, gathered money, and put it in part of campaign funding that brought the present government to office. Between then and today, the lot of the farmers haven't improved, really. What is the guarantee that as you whip up and mobilize the man on the street, the farmer in the villages, and they come out and they run around and be the Asiwaju that you want to turn them into, they will not end up in the kind of state that they are today?
I would agree with you to an extent, but I would say it's an incomplete story.
Tell the story. Let's hear.
Farmers today
Yes.
are not worse off than they were in 2015.
Are they better off?
They are not better off.
Do we have food on the table?
No, you see, the factors that determine food being on the table are actually beyond farmers right now.
Okay.
Now, if you look at it clearly, the investment in agriculture by this government has been unmatched by any government in history.
Has it translated into anything tangible in terms of?
We often say that food when you go sweet, you go know from kitchen, from when they start. Nigeria has been on a nosedive for way too long. That even if you improve almost all the indices around the Nigerian states, for as long as you import more than you produce, what you are doing is that you are promoting the dollar more than the naira. So you see, the policy direction needs to change to a level where, yes, President Muhammadu Buhari has invested a lot in agriculture. Now we need to understand we need to now work on what I call the administrative component of producing more while importing less. And this is it. Why is fertilizer very expensive?
And
because
every other thing you need
to do a lot of importation. Our economies are so linked, and that is why I'm against globalization. Because I'm going to say this clearly, and those students of history will tell you. When the UK went to meet the United States and said, look, we want you to globalize and then embrace free trade so that you can grow and become like Britain. We celebrate with the president then. He said, don't worry. When we are as developed as you are, America, we will then open up our economy and globalize. It didn't take them that long anyway. You see, in trade protectionism, and capital control are measures of free development and growth. And that is why today, in the United States, the Americans would rather not have Huawei in US and wait for AT&T to be ready with regards to 5G. So what needs to be done, if you want the price of food to come down, is to shut down your borders like was done with rice. But when the borders were shut against rice, what happened? Nigerians who these policies were meant to protect were the ones that were fighting against the policy. So if you are net negative with regards to import and export, you cannot grow as a country.
Don't you see that this also exemplifies, what you just talked about, exemplifies the disconnect between policy thinking and those who are at the end of the policy, the man on the street. There's a total disconnect.
Absolutely.
What the policy thinkers are churning out is not in tandem with what will resonate with the person who is supposed to be the end user, end beneficiary of that policy. It's exactly what happened with the shutting of the borders, which was tied to agricultural production and other forms to stimulate production and export in the country. That hasn't happened.
Now, I always come from the angle of eat your stone.
And don't forget also that right now, there's still a little bit of a doubt as to whether that also helped rice production. They say the rice pyramids that we're seeing were phantoms.
They were not phantoms, but I wouldn't have gone to Abuja to be setting up pyramids, because that is nonsense. Sorry to say this. So it's not phantom, but it's nonsense what they did. But like I said, General Park in Korea, when he led the revolution in the Korean economy, if you buy cigarettes that was made in America, you were seen as a traitor. In China, during the development phase, if you import what China can produce, the tariffs were insane, and most of them didn't even allow them to enter the country. In the United States today, as early as this year, if any American company is coming to America to bring into the United States what America can produce, they almost will frustrate you out of the system. So you see, there is a need for what I call economic nationalism, where the focus is on produce Nigeria. Okay? No, when I say produce, I'm not talking about, sorry to say this, Innocent is doing very well. We're not talking about bring part and knock them together here. If we produce just 20 million Okada every year, and you attach harrowing and plowing equipment to those Okada, you are going to see a massive revolution in the production of machinery. Can you remember, sir, what ladder car used to be from Russia those days? Go and look at ladder car today. The Russians used that car, and they developed the car and made it better. So you see, the disconnect is simply because we're not communicating enough. I often tell people, I said, when we were growing up, okay, Almost every home planted a tree. In the villages. When was the last time we planted trees in this country? Okay? If we are planting enough trees, the challenge you are having with the Lake Chad will not be there. China had a flood problem and planted and had a policy to plant about 100 billion trees. They have almost achieved half of that or more. And look at what that did. If you see, look at the videos recently, it helped eliminate flood and challenges in several parts of China. So what we need to do is to refocus and repurpose their thinking so that people will understand the benefit. Okay, look at the way we treat AGBADO and CASSAVA, right? We laugh at it.
Yeah,
but if you sit down,
it's very serious.
But if you sit down and really look at it, what you are going to see is an industry. I will use the example of the Netherlands. About 30-40 million people, right? But guess what? That's a 100 billion euro economy. If you look at Holland, Brazil, about 10 billion euro from beef. Australia, close to $10 billion from dairy. So you see, the productive capacity of the Nigerian state is there, and we're lucky. A wonderful land. You trust it anywhere in this country, it grows. So what then do? You force the people. I use the example in closing. Yes. Force the people. Yes. I mean, I often say I'm not a Democrat, but let me use this example. When you see traffic in most of our roads, and you leave the policeman, the traffic warden, and the army out of the place, what happens? You see chaos. Most of the time, the people are always children when it comes to government. So that is what needs to happen. We need to force the process, make them understand the benefit of nationalism towards our growth, and then ensure that the AGBADO and CASSAVA economy becomes a process of regenerating agriculture in Nigeria for the greater good of our country.
Well, thank you very much. We have been looking at, highlighting the farmers' concerns in the electioneering process leading to the 2023 general elections. And I've been around with the secretary of the Agriculture and Commodities Directorate of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, Mr. Redson.
It's been an honor. I always love it. I feel like home, you know? I like jive when I'm around there.
Jive, right? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I return you to Miriam Zachary for the continuation of Liberty.